Today's video is all about how to capture dialogue in an automobile. 5 ways to rig a car. Let's go. All right, so I've worked on a couple features this past year, and I got to pick up some new tricks from other sound mixers and boom ops, so I got to get a lot of hands-on experience with actually miking cars for scenes in the movies. Right now, I have 5 microphones planted in the car in various places, and we're gonna go through the 5, and I'm gonna show you where they are, what they are. So let's start down here. I have a hypercardioid microphone. It's a Schoeps CMC 641. It's a nice microphone. It's not like, you know, a cheapo $100 mic. So it does sound really nice. And what I like about using a cardioid mic in a room like this, which is a car, it's really isolated in here, and it's usually pretty dead inside automobiles. So you don't have to worry about a lot of reflections. You could probably get away with using a shotgun mic in here, but sometimes because they have interference tubes, they're using the sides to reject. You might get a weird sort of boxier type sound. This is a little more direct because it's picking up right off the front of the microphone. You can't see it. It's literally, I'm gonna touch it with my finger. Hear that? It's right out of the frame. So that's number one with when you're miking a car, is you have to figure out what your frame is. Where are you allowed to put a microphone where the camera won't see it? So that's number one. And sometimes you're shooting with several cameras. There could be one coming in from the window over here, one on this side, one low that's looking up and actually seeing a lot of the ceiling, or down in the middle in the console. So you have to sort of know what you're up against. And that's why I like to have a variety of things to try. And a lot of these you can kind of have on standby and have them ready. So you know, all right, we got a car scene coming up, but we're not really sure which way they're gonna shoot it yet. So you kind of just watch and see as the cameras start to move in and find their placements, you get to figure out what you're gonna be able to get away with. I sound utility on some features recently in the area, and they would typically reach for an Sennheiser MKH50, which is a super cardioid mic, very similar to a hypercardioid mic as far as its pickup pattern goes. I don't own that mic, so I wish I could show you what it sounded like, but it probably sounds a lot like this mic, which is the Schoeps CMC 641. Down here, I have the mic mounted on what they call, there's a company called Dinkum Systems, kind of a funny name, and they make those they make these bendy arms with a clamp. So I just have it clamped right into basically the cup holder down here in the middle of the console, and then the mic is kind of bent up at and aiming right at me, right at my mouth. Sometimes we'd have 2 talent talking to each other in the car, and so you'd actually set up a pair of these, one sort of aiming towards the passenger, one aiming towards the driver, and then you get great coverage of both people. One tip for the cardioid mic is to make sure you put it at a position where it's aiming right at their mouth, ideally, but if they're gonna drive or pretend to drive or act like they're driving, you wanna make sure your arm's not gonna block it. So if they're in a scene where they're like, oh, hold on. This arm is totally now in the way of the mic, which is down here. So you should hear a difference, like with the high end, especially. So it seems obvious, but it's something that you got to keep in mind. You also have to keep in mind that you're going to put the mic somewhere where they're not going to actually knock into it by accident while they're speaking with their hands or making a motion to something. So you got to make sure there's a little clearance. The next mic I'm going to point out here is the Peter Eng Omni Goose. This is a mic that I got to use and hear for the first time just last winter, I think. And I was kind of blown away with how well it did. The sound mixer only owned one of them at the time, but as soon as we had used it, he was like, I'm gonna order another one of these right now. It's a great mic to stuff up in the visor. So if you look up here, I have the visor closed up against the ceiling, and I just slid in a transmitter with the Omni Goose, 6-inch Omni Goose mic plugged into it, and then you just kind of bend it down. I'm gonna bend it into frame here so you can see it. There it is. Little bendy, it's like a little 6-inch bendy guy, so you can just bend it until it's pretty much, so I can get it back to where it was without making too much noise. All right, so there it is back where it was. And I think this mic sounds really good. It sounds really natural, especially in sort of a weird sounding room like this. I'm calling it a room, it's a car. The Peter Eng Omni Goose, just like its name says, it's an Omni pickup pattern on the microphone, just like most lavaliers. And so it does a really good job of picking up 2 people. Again, if you sort of aimed it, I think the scene we did the first time I heard it, we've kind of favored it more towards the driver, and we were trying to get the guy who was coming to the passenger side with his lines with a boom before he stepped into the car. But then he does step into the car and he has more lines. So after the first take, we were really like, oh wow, that actually sounded pretty good off just that one Omni floating on the driver's side, sort of aimed mostly at the driver but kind of at the passenger. So after the first take, we just went boop, and just turned it a hair, and then we had great coverage of both people, and it sounded really natural. So Peter Ing is the guy, and that's the name of his company. It's his name. He's been around the block. He's known for his breakaway cables, and he makes a lot of like custom devices for routing and breakaways and stuff like that. But what this mic is it is a modified Shure Microflex. So when you see like podium mics, the long ones that are about 12 inches long, 18 inches long on a podium, he I think cuts these into like 6-inch sections. And the capsule that he uses is the Shure WL183 Omni. It's like a lav capsule. It's kind of big for a lav, but it works great for this kind of application. What's great about these is that they plug directly into the transmitter. So I'll typically just take some adhesive like Joe Sticky stuff, put a slab of that on the back of the transmitter, and just stick it right to the inside of the visor, or sometimes the roof. If you're gonna go to the roof, I would recommend backing it up with some sort of gaff tape or something like that, a little safety net. Another place we put it is not just the visors, but you can see over here, this handle. If they're shooting into the car through the window, you can actually get it right here, especially if they're gonna turn out towards the window to talk to somebody. It's like the perfect spot, because if anything, the handle gives you something to kind of tuck it underneath, and you can put a little gaff in there too, and then it works great. All right, right now you are listening to me on a Sinkin Cub -01 is the model number of this. Essentially, it's a little round boundary mic, but it's not like most boundary mics that are essentially like omnidirectional. But what makes it unique is it has what they call a, look at my notes, a hemispherical cardioid polar pattern. I knew that. So if you look at the top of the microphone, there's a little red dot, and that shows you the edge of the circle where you should be, getting that closest to the person's mouth. And I'm not even sure if I really have that going on here, because it's mounted to the ceiling, but it's on sort of an arc here. I don't know if you can see this, the contour of the ceiling here kind of goes up. But I think this is probably the best it could sound. I'll give you a little test right now. I'm at the red dot here, and I guess if I came under down here, this should probably sound like I'm talking into the back of the mic. Hey, 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 1, 2. Hey, 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 1, 2. A Sinkin Cub's a great mic. It's nice and tiny. It's got a flat back, so you can just stick it to any surfaces at tabletops. The Sinkin Cub starts at about $379 USD, and then I think the price goes up a little bit depending on which connector you want it terminated with. All right, the fourth way that you could mic up a car is if you don't have a Cub, or if you don't have a fancy mic with a mount to put in the middle, and you're working with maybe just lavs. There's a company, Ursa, who makes a great little piece of equipment. They sent me a few of these to try out, so I want to say thanks to Ursa for that. Really cool. And they sent me some other goodies too that I'm going to show you guys in some upcoming videos. But it's called the Wire Rig. It's this little black thing in here. It comes with some adhesive pads, and you basically, I'll show you in some cutaways here, you stick an adhesive to this, and then what happens is there's a little thin black, very kind of rigid wire that wraps around. So you deploy it, you kind of pull it off the spool as much as you need, or as little as you need, and you wrap the microphone around it. And what it does is it acts like basically a gooseneck for your lavalier. But yeah, I love this thing. It's really useful, and you can hear right now we're listening to a COS 11, which is at the exact same distance as the Omni Goose. So actually I'll A/B it real quick for you here. Right now you're listening to the COS 11, and right now you're listening to the Omni Goose, and now we're back to the COS 11 on the Wire Rig. So the Ursa Wire Rig, I'll show you. I'm gonna pull it down while I speak. Hopefully the mic noise isn't too nutty here, but there it is. It's kind of bendy, and you can kind of just bring it down. So it's just a COS 11 Sinkin COS 11 microphone wrapped around the Ursa Wire Rig. And here, we'll just tuck it back up to get it hopefully out of frame. Nope, I can still see it in there a little bit. All right, I think we're out. So anyway, this is what the COS 11 sounds like. I think this sounds really good considering, and what's cool about these is you can use these in other ways. Like they make really good, they're just a really good little trick to plant microphones. So if you had like a scene where maybe you're booming most of it from inside the room, but the person's outside the room, and they come to the doorway, or they come to the door, they knock, they open the door, they deliver a line, and they deliver a line before they walk in, well, then you can grab that line on a plant on the outside of the door, and then when they walk in, now they're in boom world and you can get them with the boom. These are pretty cool. They retail for about 33 bucks or something like that, and they come with a bunch of adhesive pads, which is great. So I'll put a link below to that stuff if you want to check it out. If you don't have a mount like that, you could always just go ahead and use some tape or use some adhesives with some microphone mounts to just essentially just tape the lav right to the ceiling. You don't get the angle. That's what I do like about the wire rig, is that once you get it to where you want it, you can then bend it like down at you, and you can get that sort of that directionality, which is nice. Even though it is an Omni mic, you can tell when it's aimed at the thing you want it to be aimed at and when it's not. And so last but not least is you can mic the person who's sitting in the car, like me. I'm wearing a mic right now. It's somewhere over here. So the microphone that I'm wearing right now is a COS 11. It's in one of those, who makes it? Bumblebee, make these new mounts. I'll put a link down and I'll do a cutaway to what it looks like. And I just have it stuck right to my chest about here. The one thing to really keep in mind when you mic people for cars is you need to know where they're gonna be sitting. So if this is a reality show and you don't know where they're gonna be sitting, well then you kind of just have to see what happens, and if you need to jump in and make an adjustment, you gotta do that when you gotta do that. But if you know ahead of time, where maybe it's carpool karaoke and the host is sitting here, and you know he's gonna be sitting here and he's gonna probably be turning his head this way for most of what's happening, you probably don't want to put your mic way over in this corner because he's turning away from it. So you're going to put your mics probably more like center, between over here and the center, somewhere diagonally here. And same with mounting a mic on the person for a couple reasons. They're going to turn their head towards this direction to speak, but they're also possibly going to be wearing a seatbelt, especially if it's a show or if it's a commercial for a certain brand. They're gonna make them do seatbelts because they don't want to get that nasty fan mail that's like, hey, I noticed you guys were breaking the law. And people love to do that. So right now I have a seatbelt on and I can't hear myself. I don't have any headphones on. So I'm hoping that this lav placement was good. But I mean, I can feel that the seatbelt is coming across my body. And it's not right on the lav, but if I had put my lav maybe in the buttons here of this polo, then we probably would be having some issues because you'd hear it rubbing on me. And even maybe you can hear it rubbing on me right now, but if I'm driving and staying still, it probably sounds pretty good. But I did purposely move it to this sort of half of my my chest area here just to get it away from the seatbelt that I knew would be there. So that's one really important tip to keep in mind if you're laving up people who are going to be in cars. Where is the seatbelt going to fall on their body based on where they're going to be sitting, and who are they going to be talking to based on where they're sitting? So if it's a person in the back seat sitting in the middle, you know, if they have people on either side of them, they might actually be talking in both directions. So you might want to go straight in the middle on their lav, but if driver's over here, seatbelt goes this way, you're going to put the mic here, and you'll do the opposite on the passenger seat. So the last thing I want to talk about is transmitters and where you would put them. Now, if you have actors who are wearing mics when they get in the car, a lot of times it's common for them to have the transmitter pack hidden down by their ankle. In cars, you'll notice that your RF levels will drop greatly because the car is big metal chassis. It really kind of acts as like a cell, and it keeps a lot of the RF from getting out of the car. So it's usually a good tip to try to get your transmitters up higher, waist height, or even in like when we're talking about all these plant mics in the car, is getting them up by the ceiling of the car, which is great because the higher up, the better the transmission's gonna be for the RF to get to you. I mean, if you're transmitting to a bag, and so you're dropping your bag in the back seat and then you're listening via IFB somewhere, that's cool. But if you're running a cart and you're a block down the street, or you're just outside of the car, anything helps to get that RF to happen and stay like nice, healthy levels. So I would avoid leg, ankle wraps if you can, and just try to get your transmitters up. As far as hiding them, look for visors. I'd look for that little secret sunglasses compartment that a lot of the newer cars seem to have up here in the middle. Sometimes if you have a moon roof like I do on this car, you can slide it open, tuck some transmitters up there, and then close it. And then they're just up there, and they're nice and high, so they're doing their thing. If you're going low, you can tuck them in the console. basically just get them behind the cameras. A lot of times the cameras are mounted, like if it's GoPros, they'll be tucked into the front corners of the windshield. So sometimes you can use the dashboard because it's fair game because the cameras can't see it. It all just depends on your camera angles, of course. Whether or not you have a Cardioid mic down here, or you have a Omni Goose mic up here, or you have a Sinkin Cub up here, or you have just a lavalier microphone up here, or you're wearing a lavalier in the car. Hope you guys found all these tips and tricks helpful. If you like what you saw, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos about this kind of content, hit the subscribe button and the little bell to get notifications. And I'm going to keep doing videos when I have time. I know it's been a while since my last one, but I just have a job and I do this for a living, so sometimes I'm just not around that much. I had the day off today, so I figured I would spend a beautiful day sitting in my dark garage in my car talking to myself. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.